Hello. Just waiting for everyone to come on. Hi, Rivka. I don't think I'm going to start naming everybody who comes on because it's getting... Oh, here, Sarah Chana is on very quickly. That's so exciting. So quickly. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Let's
Thank you.
volume buttons here.
Thank you so much for being so punctual. Usually I have to talk to myself
for
a few minutes before.
Well, you're pretty interesting if you talk to yourself.
I try.
Yeah. So, I'm ready whenever you are. Should we start or wait for a whole bunch of people to? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we could just start. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I understand we're talking about parenting stress, which is an enormous topic, actually. When I started to think about it, I started to write down, what is, I have my list of, of all kinds of stresses. Maybe we should start by defining stress, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is a huge word. We all kind of have a sense of what stress is, but, I think we'll define it for our purposes as any negative emotion. So our depression is a form of stress, like our low mood is a form of stress. Our irritability is a form of stress. Our worry and our anxiety is a form of stress. The only time when we're not stressed is when we're in a state that's kind of in flow, positive, calm, happy, joyous. So those aren't stressful states. We're not in that state too often, but that very flow state. But stress is part of life. But parenting stress is interesting because it would seem that, considering how negative, I'm just saying stress is, in terms of the kind of flavor of emotion, we would think that we'd want to be happy as parents. We'd want to be loving our babies and enjoying our children and being joyous and happy at home, whereas in fact we're stressed. we're stressed at home.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Meaning that we're worried and we're irritable, we're tired, we're overwrought, we're overwhelmed. All those negative emotions are normal every day in the parenting journey and every day in life too. So it's just that parenting has its own unique way of bringing that out.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to go on about it? Okay, great. Well,
I'm trying not to give too many examples of stress from today.
Okay. It's not so much examples of stress as examples of the things that trigger our stress. Okay, mm-hmm. So
yes.
I mean, when we have little babies and waking us up at night, or even, preschoolers or school-age children, whatever it is, who just don't let us sleep, then we have stress from exhaustion. It's like we're tired. And that's not a good way to face any day, when we're tired. So there's a lot of fatigue in parenting that comes with the territory. Some people have never experienced this kind of fatigue till they had children and are never rested again till they stop having children. So there's exhaustion, and then there's things that happen on the parenting journey that are there's part of the journey, but there's the stress of not being on the same page necessarily with your spouse, your parenting partner, or your ex-spouse in some cases, having really different kinds of approaches. So that's stressful. So the parenting thing can be stressful. Children themselves also have their conflicts. So being at home and, we're hoping to be this peaceful shelter from the storm, but really the storm is in the house and the kids are screaming and they're fighting and they're not cooperating. So they're bothering each other. That's a big stress on us,
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just being normal, meaning they need guidance, they need education, they need direction. They're not just doing what they're supposed to do. So they're not listening, they're not going to bed, they're not getting up, they're not doing their homework. So each one of these not doing what we want them to do creates a feeling inside of us that's not so pleasant.
or like wrestling on in like, you know, turning your living room into a boxing ring, or, you know.
Yeah, it's noisy, it's messy, it's chaotic. There's always stuff that is not finished, not cleaning up from the last meal that we fed them, now preparing the next meal. It's endless. It's tedious, which also can produce stress. If we're alone and isolated, then it can be boring. And we're left with sometimes our own sense of not doing this well enough or being confused. Confusion is such a chronic part of the parenting journey. How are we supposed to know? Like, what is the right thing to say and what's the right thing to do? What's the best thing to say? And then our children have their challenges. So we have some principal who's calling us all the time complaining about one of our kids. So we have that kind of stress, and our child is not thriving in school. And then we have the worry that, like, what's going to be, how is this kid going to be, you know, able to get on with his life, be a functioning adult, or how's he going to get out of grade 6 alive? Like, well, you know, all their problems, their sadness, their fear, their negativity. We feel all their things too, especially, I'm going to say a little bit probably more mothers than fathers, although some fathers also get into it, but we tend to feel our own stuff and theirs too, just because of our natures. So that's a lot. What do they say? You're only as happy as your least happy kid. That thing. You know, there's always some kid with a serious problem, and as a parent, you can't really sleep peacefully till they're all settled. And because they are human beings, they are never all settled. There's always a challenge that they are facing and we are facing. I just want to see if I missed anything on this.
Guilt.
Yes.
Yes,
our feelings of inadequacy or of having made mistakes or are making mistakes, not doing good enough, not having enough for them, not being rich enough for them, you know, not being able to give them everything that they ask for that all their friends seem to have, just always failing.
Yeah, this is a really good list.
Parenting territory.
Yeah, great list. Now what?
This is why it's stressful. And then this is like, we have, those are normal things, and we may have even more challenges because, again, just being human, some of us have children who are not thriving. They've got all sorts of disabilities, emotional, mental, physical, and we do too. Or, you know, our parenting partner might be unwell. There might be illness in the family on top of this, or trauma going on. While we are raising children, might be having severe marriage problems going on in the background, not necessarily parenting things, just severe problems. We may be in the middle of separation or divorce. We may be in the middle of remarriage, moving. Like, life doesn't stop just because we had a child and we're going to be now just resting for 20 years in a blissful state raising that child. Everything's going on, including all our past baggage that we're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
All our feelings of never being accepted by anybody and being a reject. And we come with our children who are also for some reason not good enough or having some social problem. And then the stress we feel of our entire life, you know, is exaggerated as we're going through the parenting journey.
Do you find that you see yourself in your kids sometimes, and when they do things that you thought that you should have gone through, then you're either feel guilty or, you know, or it, like, if you have a kid that like is so much like you, it irks you even more.
Yeah, sometimes our children really frighten us because they're so much like ourselves, and, you know, whatever, or sometimes they reawaken our pain. Like, if they go through a challenge that we went through, like I'm suggesting, let's say we had social troubles and then we see our child has social troubles. The last thing we wanted for the child, or we were funny looking and now they're experiencing some funny looking thing about them, or whatever it is, like we, like I said, feel their pain and worry for them, especially based on what we ourselves went through. But yeah, our children trigger us also. I mean, there's the child that's easy to raise. And if we have a few children, we probably have a few that are pretty average to raise and one who's really easy to raise, almost like born, self-raising, like the perfect mature human being at 2 years old.
Really? Do those exist?
They do. Yeah, there's some kids who like they're parenting you, like they're just so like, nurturing, supportive, cooperative, whatever. You don't have any, but that's but, but they're not that common, but they do come. But most children give us a little bit of a run for our money. And then if you have enough children, you probably have one who's really challenging. And if you're lucky, it's only one of the group, because it can be 2 or 3 or more of your household are full of children who have all sorts of special needs, or they're very difficult to raise. And then we can have the stress of failing with that child, the feeling like we're failing with that child, or just not knowing where to turn with that child, not knowing how to bring out the best in that child, not liking that child and feeling horrible guilt for not enjoying that child. These are all normal things. This is why it's stressful. Yeah, it happens. It happens to everybody. So I'm gonna see if I left out anything that I've written down. Do you think I left out anything in that list of?
I don't know. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed with how accurate that was.
Yeah.
That covers a lot.
It does. I think that confusion, interestingly, is one of the most difficult things to deal with, because it's just not simple to raise a human being. It's really complicated. And when we see our children in various stages, they might frighten us, like where they're at. Let's say a 12-year-old who's very defiant, or a 16-year-old who seems uninterested in school. And we just like can't see how the future is going to take place. And we project disaster, a catastrophe, if the child doesn't do her homework now, whatever. Like everything seems larger than life. There seems to be a lot of competition among parents and among the society at large. Everything seems like it's going to be hard. Like, got to get your A++ so you can get into the university program of your choice and get the career of your choice. Otherwise, you won't be able to live in the city of your choice. That goes like, there's so much heavy stuff. It just is not like relaxing or a chilled kind of thing for most people. They've got the pressure of the world upon them.
And it also seems like everybody else has it together, but it's not true.
Nobody has it together. You can't, so we might look at somebody and see that their kids seem to be all beautifully turned out, always, neat, dressed, beautiful, the latest clothes. Their house is in order. Dinner's on the table. The person's always smiling and chilled. It's not real it's not, if you know somebody like that, you're not seeing the whole story. For example, people like that usually have a whole team of support that's making it possible. So the house is beautiful and the children are beautiful and the person's beautiful because there's hired help, a lot of hired help making everything beautiful. We have to appreciate our own unique situation, what's real for us, because the truth is that a lot of women these days are working and they're trying to have this beautiful home, and they're raising children who have all those needs I just spoke about. And is this really possible for the average person? I mean, we can't do everything. We just can't. One person can't do everything. So that's maybe where that guilt comes in also. Like, did I do enough? Should I be doing more? Should I have quit my job so I can be home with my kid during this rough time that he's going through? Or, I can't quit my job because he needs, I need to pay for his private schooling, or I need to pay for his food or his roof over his head. There's a lot of practical things. And I don't know, there's just a lot of pressure on the kid too, that he wants to conform and be, whatever his friends have, do, he wants to have and do. Mm-hmm. And we don't even know if that's what we want him to have and do. We have our own values sometimes, but the kids in the school, he has friends that have other values.
Yes. That's been a big one that comes up because, mm-hmm. Especially when in today's day and age with all of the, with the cell phones being like, my kids' friends had cell phones like when they were like 5. And I'm like, I'm not getting my 5-year-old this cell phone. That's ridiculous. And then they feel like an outcast. Well, they're not really 5 when they have, they're like, I mean,
at
but
whatever
then it's a lot of social pressure. They think you're the worst parent, and you know,
and you're not sure whether you are or aren't actually. You know, I kind of think that parents way back in the 1950s, before they knew so much about parenting, were more confident in themselves, which reduced their stress a bit. Now they were doing a horrible job, but but they felt good about it. Whereas we're probably
well, they weren't
a great
watching
job.
everybody on social media make it look so easy.
Well, yes, you know, as if you're just a sweet person, then your children will just be sweet children too. And if you just love them enough, then everything will just fall into place, which is not true, okay? Not unless you gave birth to one of those easy self-raising children. You know, like the average child requires a lot from the parent, and the parent is just a human being. The parent is tired, doesn't want to ask 10 times for you to do something. Real parents are not sweet as sugar 24 hours a day. You know, and even if they were, that's not necessarily what's going to make a child sweet as sugar, because a child has a lot of genetic things that he's born with that create temperament, personality, mental health challenges. So, you know, you could be calm and sedate and beautiful, whatever, and have this wild ADHD child or somebody who's on the spectrum, or there's a million, you know, mental health diagnoses that we have now, dysregulated, dysmorphic, just whatever, you know, like you're wonderful yourself, maybe calm and whatever, but your child is a developing human being with his own journey. You're not making him, you're having an impact on him, okay, but it's not like you could really make him, and that means that we're not totally in control. And that is hard too. Like, we'd like to think, you know, oh, if I just do this with the child, just feed him this, just take him there, just know what to say, just say it the right way, then everything will work out. But no, that doesn't happen either. As parents, though, there are things we can do to reduce the feeling of stress. Having laid out the big problem, okay, the good news is that there is still a way to enjoy this journey if we look at it properly. Like, if we turn our heads on the right way, and tend to our feelings the right way, we can actually help ourselves have a stress-reduced parenting journey. It's not going to be stress-free. It's like life is not going to be stress-free, and it's not meant to be. Okay, there's challenges every day, and those challenges actually help us discover parts of ourselves that are latent, that we didn't know we had, that bring out our greatness, that help us make a mark here. You know, like, our challenges are okay for us. We shouldn't run from challenge, and we can't anyways. But we don't have to suffer so much. We could actually be happy even while we're raising children who are not listening, who are not cooperating, who's, you know, are just being normal kids who...
But you could be happy when your kids aren't listening?
Well, a lot of our stress is what we call self-induced. Like, sometimes a person will think, as their children aren't listening, why don't my kids listen to me? You know, everybody else's kids listen to them. Like, what's wrong with you kids? Like, what, you know, it's as if there's something terrible going on in our house, which is actually going on in everybody's house, right? Like, a normal child doesn't listen all the time. And they'd have to be, like, that's not even good for them. Like, they have to experiment with, you know, finding their own way and being their own person. So if they're really, really compliant, they may be sick, like physically sick.
Oh, yeah.
The best behaved child is one who's got a fever. You know, he's like lying there smiling, and
or if they're scared, or like if there's some sort of...
if they're in really bad shape, if you've traumatized the wits out of them, then they'll be, you know, more compliant. So that's not a good sign. If they've got a little, you know, life in them, they're going to be a bit of a challenge for you. But so it depends what you're saying to yourself. Like, as your kid is running away, you're calling him for bed, and he's running down the hall the other direction. And you're saying to yourself, okay, this is parenting. This is parenting everywhere in every house around the world. This is normal, okay? It's not my special curse. This is what kids do, okay? Isn't it adorable? Oh, I'll look back at this in 30 years, whatever, and miss all this. I'm like, look how quiet my house is. Nobody's running. Nobody's making any noise. Nobody's making a mess. There's nobody here. You know, like, maybe right now with all this going on, this is just something to take in stride. It's what children do. They don't stand in line quietly with you at the bank. They tug at your skirt. They want to go home. They're bored. It's what they do. So having our expectations more in line with reality, and not beating ourselves up for feeling inadequate, that would reduce some of our stress right there. Because most of our stress is what we're thinking and feeling about a situation. Well, let's talk about the feelings first. If the child is running in the other direction while we're calling him for bed or for bath or brush your teeth, whatever, well, Rebecca, what do you think we're feeling at that time? We understand it's normal, but it's 9 o'clock. We've had a long day. We still have work to do, paperwork we brought home from the office or something we have to prepare for tomorrow. And he's running the other way. Okay? So how do you think?
I'm just trying to go over the feeling that I had a few hours ago. Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
I was feeling anxious that my husband wasn't home yet to deal with it. Yeah, that's a good one. Rock Solid Self said exasperated.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know what I feel like when it's all coming at the same time, like when all the kids are kind of ganging up on you.
Yeah.
I feel kind of like a punching bag. Like I feel
a little bit victimized.
Victimized. Yeah. Rivka said frustrated. Leah said, I just can't do this.
Yes.
Tirza said tired.
Mm.
Yeah.
So all of these, now, when it comes to feelings, we don't want to change our feelings. We want to accept our feelings. That's how we reduce the stress of negative emotion. So we can name our feelings even when we're dealing with certain age children. We can say, guys, I'm really tired and I'm getting frustrated as you're running in the other direction. Well, I'm calling you for bedtime. Okay. Like, I'm just, I'm not enjoying this. This isn't funny to me. The kids are laughing and running down the hall the other way and screeching, whatever. And you're going like, I'm getting really frustrated. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm feeling exasperated. Now it's interesting. When we name our feelings, we're actually releasing them. Okay, this is the basis of a good therapy also, that when people have a chance to find what they're feeling, name those feelings. The feelings are like, the word for the feelings like a key that unlocks and takes it from up through your heart, up through your mouth and out. Okay, so we may have not shared that with the child. Let's say this kid was too young to hear that news, or we weren't in the mode, we didn't want to share it. But let's say we had a horrible night with the kids, like we just feel like crying, or in the morning when we sent them out the door after fighting with them to get ready on time, trying to get them ready for the bus or the carpool or the whatever, get out the door in time for school. And it was just exhausting. The whole thing was exhausting. And we feel close to tears. Okay, let's say in the morning or in the evening or at any time, because it could happen. Taking a moment to be with ourselves with those feelings and to accept those feelings, to name them just to ourselves, or to call a friend and or to talk to a spouse and just say, this what happened to me. I feel so useless or helpless or exasperated or angry, whatever it is. To name the feelings and release them, or to write them down and then tear up that paper. It's not a journal you have to keep, but just write it out. Anything like that moves the stress out of your body. And when you do that, you feel lighter. It's like, okay, half the problem is like things that feel bottled up inside. Mm-hmm. That becomes a storm and a minefield. Like if you don't let it out as soon as it comes in, the longer you leave it in there, let's say a day, a week, a month, 5 years, and you just push it in, push it down, swallow it, never acknowledge it, don't even pay attention to it, then one day we crack up, okay? Because it's like you've created a volcano inside. So it is important to just keep noticing, yeah, that was hard, that was frustrating, that was awful, this makes me feel horrible. And as you do it, close to the time it happens, you're just kind of self-cleaning. You're just like an oven that keeps self-cleaning,
I have two questions on that.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So number one, is there any value in naming your emotions to your kids so they develop their own emotional vocabulary? Or is it better to like kind of wait and not talk to them about it until later?
We don't want to overload them with our emotions. That's why like a couple of words of like, I'm not finding this funny. I'm getting frustrated. We don't have to go too deep with our children, the real point of like where I feel like crying, I don't like to share that with children. Like even if it's true that I now feel like I'm going to crack up, explode, I don't want to live, this is not to share with children, although it may be real and it may be to share with our therapist or, like I said, our friend or a piece of paper or at least ourselves, okay, to open up our mouths and say, this is how I feel. With children, they just get the early stages of, I'm either happy with this, I'm really happy, or I'm starting to feel scared, or I'm feeling uncomfortable, or this is annoying me. I'm starting to feel frustrated and irritated. They're going to get that. And that helps to build a feeling vocabulary in them. And then when we name their feelings, we're going to be helping them to release their stress too. But that's a topic for like another day. But
okay. So
today we're taking care of ourselves.
Say that for that to help them find their.
It's okay for them and good for them to hear a few of our feelings. But our real helplessness, like falling apart in front of them, is too scary for them. They need to know that the adults can and will cope and carry on. And even if that's not particularly true, I wouldn't share that with them. I would go and get the help that we need so that we can get it together and carry on with the difficult work of parenting. It can be very difficult. It's like a classroom teacher who starts crying in the middle of the class.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, forget it. Yeah.
Right. Then they know you're done.
You're done. Yeah.
So the other question that I had was, okay, so let's say you as a child did not develop an emotional vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And as an adult, so now you're trying to be able to access that language for yourself, but you have a hard time in the moment.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because, well, there are 5 emotions. Okay. So if we can all just become familiar with the 5 main categories, which are happy feelings, sad feelings, mad feelings, scared feelings, and confused or unsettled feelings. Okay. Now, within each of those categories, there's lots of shades. There's lots of shades of sad, lots of shades of happy, lots of shades of scared, and whatever. I think if we didn't have good emotional education, if we ever have, there's so many online, and there's webinars now on emotional health. There's all sorts of classes. There's so many books. There's private therapy. There's many apps. There's YouTube. There's so many ways to learn about feelings. So we can certainly upgrade, our own emotional vocabularies and our ability to identify our feelings, and we should, because that's going to reduce our stress. When we don't, then we tend to try and reduce our stress with things like various pills, illegal or legal, various substances, maybe, drinking wine or alcohol, or being overworking to the point where we don't notice how we feel, or starving ourselves or stuffing ourselves. There's a lot of dysfunctional things that we do if we will not contact the way we're really feeling, because those feelings are so painful. We have an instinct to deal with them somehow. And this is where all of our addictive and dysfunctional things come from. And the less we're into those addictive and dysfunctional things, the more we can help our children have healthy ways of dealing with their feelings too. If we have no clue how to deal with feelings, how effective are we going to be to help our children deal with their real stress? They also have real stress in childhood. And of course they will in adulthood, because life is stressful. So now so I was talking there about, helping ourselves simply by acknowledging what we feel. That reduces tremendous amounts of stress. But we have to do more than that. That's just one of the things that we can do. I just want to show you also there's a lot of stress release tools. And I won't do too many here. I'll do some though. There's one called, a very easy one, that anybody can do when they have just a moment of privacy. So you can, if the kids are all around and things are really bad, go to the bathroom, shut the door and lock it. And for 2 minutes, just do what's called emotional stress release. I'm just going to put my cup down. Just drinking water there. Okay. And all you do for that is you take 2 fingers. You could take more if you like, but 2 fingers is enough. And you put them above your eyebrows, kind of halfway between the eyebrow and the hairline. And close your eyes and press gently in. And while you're doing that, first just take a nice deep breath in and let it out. and then you can just focus on the stress that you're feeling. So let's say the kids are fighting and you can't get them to listen to you, and you can't calm the house down, and everything is boiling up inside of you. Like, I can't take this. Okay, like I just want everybody to be quiet, go to bed, get out of my way, but they're not moving. Okay, so we're in our private space and we're just thinking about how much we hate it. Okay, while we're holding these spots. So we're allowing ourselves to feel our feeling, but at the same time, we're pressing on this particular location, which causes stress release. If you try it, experiment a little bit with it yourself. These are energetic points, and they're also physical points that cause a blood flow to move from the fight or flight centers where our stress is starting to bubble over, and into the frontal cortex, which is a calmer, thinking, more kind of adult location. And the two energies are kind of mingling, and we're beginning to settle down. You can hold it there for 30 seconds or for 3 minutes, or however much time you have. And that is just one very simple stress release technique. But there's a lot of other energetic techniques that are like that. And again, you can look up energy psychology on YouTube or something and say, like, energy psychology techniques, tapping things. I don't know if you know about the tapping, but there's something called emotional freedom technique, and there's lots of other techniques like that, where again you would allow the feeling to come up, where you're tapping on meridian pathways in the body, the same places that acupuncturists use. So they call it acupressure. And you're tapping there while you're thinking, I can't take this, I'm so upset, I can't stand it, they don't listen to me, or they disrespect me. And some kids are really harsh to their parents. So you may have a kid who says, I hate you, or you're so stupid, or you're so mean, or I'm not doing anything you say. And you're just a nice person trying to, get your kid to do what's good for him or her. And it's just it can be heartbreaking, So we can be learning some of these techniques. Like I said, I don't think we're going to learn them tonight necessarily, but knowing how to take all this feeling out of us and just look. Once we take that feeling out of us, we can go like, yeah, okay, I see what's going on here now. I'm pretty ineffective at getting the kids to listen, so I think I need to acquire some better tools. Like when the dust clears, it's not that I have horrible children, or I'm the worst parent, or I have the worst kids, or I'm the only one who can't cope. None of that is true, but that's what it might feel like, and that's what causes stress. So if we could get rid of, once we clear the stress, we'll go like, okay, it's not, this is my house, my family, whatever. It's not, I'm not in war. It felt like war, but now that I've cleared the energy, I see that it's just a normal parenting problem. Let me figure out what I need to do to make things better in this house. And so having actual parenting skills is one way to reduce so much of our parenting stress. I'm going to come to that in a minute, because we could probably spend most of the time tonight looking at which kinds of parenting skills can reduce our parenting stress. But I just want to cover stress techniques in general first. So we've looked at naming our feelings, using some energy tools maybe to move our own feelings. Certainly if we're constantly overwhelmed, professional therapy is a great way to reduce our overall stress. And there's our thought process, okay? Now, thoughts, unlike feelings, are something that we should work on changing. Feelings we want to accept. Thoughts we want to assess, okay? Is this thought helpful, or is it making things worse? Because every thought that we put our attention on has a chemical package associated with it and a feeling package associated with it. So a thought is not just like a sentence in our head. Let's say if we say the thought like, my kids are the worst kids. Let's say we had that thought, okay? That thought it's a negative thought. It feels bad to say it. It's not a happy thought. It's a very discouraging, maybe even hopeless kind of thought. It's a saddening thought. And the chemicals that go with that are the opposite of what an antidepressant would do. They are depressing chemicals, okay, that we're now circulating. So we'll say, well, that kind of thought, if I put my attention there, I'm going to produce a lot of negativity throughout my body. There, I'm producing the stress as I put my attention on that thought. So I want to choose thoughts that actually have good chemistry attached to them, positive emotions attached to them, that give me hope, that give me strength, that give me resilience, that give me optimism. What thought would be better in this situation than I have the worst kids? Okay, like, so can you think of one? Let's say a parent is feeling so discouraged. Her kids are just all over the place, throwing things all over the house, fighting with each other, ignoring their parents. Okay, what could the parent of that household think that would be a better thought to put one's attention on than I have the worst kids?
So I know something that has helped us is we kind of, in front of our kids, I don't know if I don't know if this is the right thing, but we'll just be like, Hashem, I don't know how to handle this situation.
Pray.
Please help me. I really have no clue what to do in this moment, and I say it out loud so that my kids can hear. But but then it kind of puts things into a little bit of perspective and helps a little bit.
Well, the thought behind that kind of thing is, I'm not alone here, right? God can help me with this, and is there to help me. Okay, so I mean, there is a thought process that's very positive in that. So I feel alone in the house, but if I'm just looking at what's going on because nobody's home but me and these 5 crazy kids, let's say, but then when I realize, no, God is with me here and can help the situation, that itself is a very good place to put our attention. But even the thought of, you know what, they're noisy and they're doing whatever they're doing, but I'm okay. We'll all be okay. We'll soon go to bed. It'll soon be quiet here. And tomorrow I'm going to make a plan to figure out what I need to do to get things more under control. Okay, so if I think about that, even if I think about soon they'll all be asleep, like right now it might be 8 o'clock and maybe they're going to be throwing pillows around till 10 o'clock, but soon they'll all be asleep and I'll be able to rest. Okay, soon they'll be out the door and I'll be able to think, whatever is going wrong, soon it actually will be over and I'll be able to get the help I need to make this better tomorrow. Okay, I can try again. I can try again tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I can try again tomorrow. It'll be better tomorrow. I can read something. I can call someone. I can do something about it. So, now our tendency of how we think is a product of what we allow ourselves to practice, basically. The more we do something, the better we get at it. So the more we say disparaging things to ourselves, like, this is a disaster, I can't cope, I can't, I don't want to live here, whatever. The more we say things like that, the better we get at saying things like that.
Right.
And every time we say things like that, we have all that negative chemistry and stress chemistry that we are pouring through our system. Fortunately, the more we practice anything, the better we get at it. So if we start to practice more hopeful thoughts, they're just sentences, right? Tomorrow's a new day. I can learn new things. I can get the help I need. I can learn new skills. I'm going to look into this. The more we do that, the more we'll be able to do that. The easier it gets to do that.
I really like that.
Yeah. So just practice the right thing. Okay. Like
yeah.
Saying the wrong thing for 30 or 40 years, but so what? Start saying the right thing now and retrain your brain. Our brain is just listening to, it follows us, we're leading it.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes feels like it's leading us, but that's not what's really going on. Like, if you don't like what's happening in the thought department, you are actually free to choose another thought. Now, when it comes to feelings, you can't just change your heart like that. With the feelings, I say we have to accept them. But with the thoughts, that's just where you're putting your attention. We can put it on the hopeless side of this problem, or we can put it on the more positive side of the situation. So let's just put it over to, let's put it where it's going to serve us well.
I really like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a good strategy or not, but I've tried it a few times. Like, if my kids are all like screaming and fighting and I'm losing it. So I've told them that I really, at this point, until they're ready to chill out and be able to have normal conversation, I'm going to put my noise canceling headphones on and listen to music, and I just ignore what's going on. I'm not sure if that's the best strategy. What do you think about
It's far better than screaming at them, right?
Oh, I've done that too. But...
Yeah. I like the idea. Like, if you feel like there's nothing more I can do here, I can see the situation's not dangerous. It's not like nobody needs me to save a life right now. I'll just put my head canceling things on and at least calm myself down and wait until this storm is over. And it also has that hopeful thought in it that you understand it will be over. You know, like, we get lost in stress when we think like this problem that I'm in right now will never end. I'll never get out of it. Like, everything in parenting ends in a few minutes. Like, you know, in the morning, they eventually get out and go to school, you know. If they're on summer holiday and you're cracking up after 2 weeks of trying to entertain them, soon they'll be back in school, you know, like, it's whatever. Right. And there's always, I like that strategy of looking to when this problem's going to end, and when soon we'll be back in this quiet spot. Soon I'll be at work with the adults, and I'll be out of this funny farm, you know, like, or soon I'll be in bed, or soon my husband will be home, I'll be feeling better, or soon I'm going out. Now brings us to another stress reduction department, which is self-care. Okay, because one thing we don't want to be is kind of isolated with our children, far away from other adults, alone with people who need us, and can only give limited amounts to us. So there's nothing filling our bank and everything emptying it. So in that way, we're going to be stressed really quickly. We need adult time. We need personal time. We need downtime. Mm-hmm. We need away from the children time. We need fun. We need food, good food. We need exercise. We need some sleep. We need a holiday. Like, we've got to do all that stuff so that we can bring our full and best self to the parenting moments that we are actually in. So allowing ourselves to be run ragged, exhausting ourselves when we, you know, should not be, giving more than we need to, or doing more than we need to the point where it's hurting us. All of these things need to be avoided. So if you don't have a lot of help, then you reduce the amount of cooking and cleaning that you do. You do what you need to do to make sure nobody starves, and you don't have elaborate spreads that make you spend hours and hours that you don't have, and you get easy ways to make a bed instead of, like, whatever. Like, you do the easiest and the simplest. You know, the more help you have, great, let them do all this for you. Like, but you need to take care of yourself, because without doing that, you will be very stressed. And then you're just going to be an irritable wreck of a parent. So now some people think, well, I haven't got time. You know, I work all day, then I have to come home and make dinner for the kids. And, you know, when is this me time supposed to happen? So what, you thinking about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually been pretty good about that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. But sometimes just on the way to work, we can be listening to a podcast that we really enjoy, that's adding to our life. We're just sitting there, like, either driving or on the bus or something, listening to something that's feeding our adult brain, that's interesting or that's funny, you know, or we could be on the phone with people. And we have to count that time, recognize that there is me time that's happening, or I can make happen. I'm not just I have to get to work somehow. There's a time of getting to work that can actually be quality time for most people. And even in the evening, you know, yes, we have to look after the children, but at a certain point, the little babies, the little guys, are in bed early. And the ones who are older can take care of themselves after 8 o'clock. We, after 8 o'clock or 8:30, we can do our own thing. We don't need to be putting kids to bed for 3 hours or something. You know, like, who needs to be put to bed at 9? Or, you know, if you're that old that you're up at 9, put yourself to bed, you know. Right. And so we can have couple time. We can spend time with our spouse. We can, you know, and we can tell the children, this is my mommy and daddy time right now. So you go do your homework or go read in bed or whatever it is. We're finished now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Give yourself relationship time.
Off duty.
Bye.
Sign on the door.
Signs, yeah. So
sorry, I'll be open again tomorrow at 7.
Yeah.
There was a few questions. Is it better to put on a strong front for the kids so they take us seriously?
So now you're getting into like the parenting side of reducing stress. Okay. I'm looking at what somebody's writing in. My kid is not asleep till 9:30. Right. They could be, I don't know how old that child is, you know, when the child's not asleep till 9:30. But if they're, yeah, maybe they're a 4-year-old who's not asleep till 9:30. But if they're up that late, we still don't have to play with them. We can say, I'm available for you, you know, till 8 or 8:30. And
Wait, if
after
the
that,
4-year-old is up at 9:30, then maybe he's not getting enough sleep.
probably isn't. But some of the kids, you know, some of the ADHD kids, they really can't settle down to sleep. So,
Right.
you know, you put them to bed at 7:45, and 9:30 they're still up. Okay, so that can happen. But you don't have to be playing with them. You know, like you said, you're finished with them, even if they're 4 years old. You could be finished with them at 8:30 if that's what you want. If you don't mind their company and they're easy on your nerves, they could fall asleep on a couch near you. There's all kinds of different parenting styles. You don't have to take anybody's parenting style other than your own. Whatever is easy and pleasant for you. Okay. Your question was, should you be tough? Well, so they'll take you seriously.
It wasn't my question. It was
Somebody else. Oh,
Sherry something. Sherry. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't always put on a strong front for my kids, but I don't know what the right thing to do is.
You know, you want to be respected. I think the question is, how do we get our kids to respect us? How do we get to be taken seriously? And there are some skills involved in that. You know, like we want to be using a voice that sounds authoritative when you say things. It's not like you don't have that questioning, like, okay, guys, can you go to bed, please? Can you go to bed? You know, no? Or, okay, well, would you need some more water? Like, what do you need? Do you want to go to bed now? Like, you know, if you really want them to go to bed, it's like, okay, guys, it's bedtime now. Okay, like you want to sound more.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not what I was like. I was thinking more like tonight I had an issue with one of my kids where he thought I was yelling at him, and I didn't feel that I was yelling at him, right?
Because you had the stern face.
Because I had the stern face, and he explained to me that he finally did after I tried to understand why he felt I was yelling at him, and he kind of like got out that I had a yelling energy, and it, right, like that it hurt his feelings. So even if I wasn't yelling, and to me, like I was being calm because I was like holding everything in.
Yeah, but you had that yelling energy.
But I had the yelling energy, so it hurt,
and they know
badly.
Yeah, they know about that.
Yeah.
And kids will say, you know, stop yelling at me, and then we go like, that's not yelling. I'll show you what yelling is. Do you want to know what yelling is? You know, and then you start raising your voice. But we are, when we're stern, they take it that way, and there's nothing. That's how they feel. So we'll go like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, this doesn't feel that friendly. I guess I'm tired, and I really want the games to stop now, and I want you to go to bed. I guess that's what you're picking up, you know. So we acknowledge the child's feelings, and then we're not. I mean, yeah, like I've had it. So like, I am tired now, and I want you to go to bed. That's okay. For you know, we know we're not hurting them. You know, if we're not insulting them, we're not screaming at them. The fact that we are frustrated, well, what do you think? Like, you know, it's late, I'm tired, I've got a lot to do, you know, so yeah, that's human.
Yeah, so Sherry, if that wasn't what your question was, maybe just message again.
Well, the other thing, I think the real question is about reducing parenting stress through having a toolbox of parenting techniques that are predictably stress reducing. So, you know, I have a bunch of things. I wrote a book called Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice. It has a bunch of little techniques, not too many, just a few that help keep us in a less stressed place. You know, the foundation skill is the 80-20 rule, which says that we need to be saying things that feel good to the child. Now, when I wrote that book many years ago, I talked about saying things that feel good to the child. But the truth is, as I've kind of become more brain savvy over the decades since I've written that, I'd say that if it feels good to the child, it's also actually feeling good to us, which means that the thing that we're saying or the action that we're taking, the words that we're using or the action that we're taking is low stress and high good energy for our own body. So for example, if one of the things in the 80-20 rule, it will say that in the 80%, we're going to find things like smiling, laughing, praising, affirming, listening empathically. Now, all of those things, touching, giving treats, all of those things, showing understanding, emotional coaching. I forget, like it's a lot of lists, saying yes, agreeing. Yes, they feel good to the child, but they actually feel good to us as we're saying them and doing them. That is, they are soothing our own energy system. How stressed do we feel after a morning of yelling them out the door or screaming them to bed or getting them to do the homework? Now, it's not just that they're stressed. We're stressed by those same things that cause them stress, okay? So our negativity, the things in the 20%, telling them to do things, saying no to them, threatening them, disciplining them, those are much harder on our system, although it depends on how skilled we are. There's hard, harder, and hardest, okay? So if we're screaming, that's the worst for them and the worst for us, stress-wise, okay? If we're just laying down the rule and telling them there's going to be a consequence, it's somewhat stressful for them and certainly more stressful for us than handing them candy. Okay, it's a little stressful still to be involved in any form of discipline, but we do need to. But if we're going to use discipline, we want the least stressful types of discipline, that once we get there. Easiest on us and easiest on them. So it's a two-way street there, okay? So the 80-20 rule is aim to be saying 4 out of 5 sentences that would feel good. And those 4 to 5 sentences can include things like just talking about interesting topics, like the weather, sports. I call it news, weather, and sports sort of thing, like things that you saw and did, noticing something good, giving positive feedback, these things, okay? Make sure you're saying 4 of those before you give an instruction. The instruction is always now moving slightly into the stress department for both parent and child. Because now if I say, okay, well, story time is over, it's time for bed. Okay, now we're all now we're all entering the funny zone where, is it time for bed? Is anybody just going to roll over now, close their eyes and go to sleep? Okay, good night. Is it going to happen like that? Or is there going to be an ongoing, 2-hour routine now trying to get this to happen? So as soon as we give an instruction.
I never thought of that as the 20.
All instructions.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is 80% of our 20% is instructions. We do have to tell children, brush your teeth, wash your face, have your bath, get into pajamas, put away your school stuff, do your homework, clean up your mess. And sometimes that's the only thing a parent is saying to children. So the whole relationship is based on that when it's all negative, okay? And that actually leads to more.
Oh gosh, then you got to step it up with the positive.
4 positives for every one of those instructions, okay? Now, if you do that, you will be less stressed and the children will actually be more cooperative because they're also less stressed. So that 80-20 is very important. And then, there's the I do not argue with you rule. Now, the I do not argue with you is going to be tremendously less stressful for us parents. So the child says, oh, could I go to my friend's house, and we say, well, it's a school night. No, I'd rather you stay home. And then the child starts, I call that round 1 of the conversation, then there's round 2. Please, I didn't go last night. You never let me go, whatever. Now in round 2, I tell the parent, go ahead. If you want to change your mind, you can do it right there. But that's the only place you can do it. So you can go, let me think about that. Yes, okay, you can go. Or you can go, let me think about that. No. No, I don't want you to go. And that's the end of the discussion. Now, if that's really the end of the discussion, you're going to be saving yourself a lot of stress, okay? If you are now walking away, getting ready to go cook something, go read something, go talk to your spouse, whatever, get out of there. The child at first, who's used to a good 20 rounds with you, the child at first will still try round 3. You're so mean, you never let me do anything, this is the worst place to live, whatever, and you're not interested because you said that was the end of the discussion. So if you don't engage after you say that this is the end of the discussion thing, After a week or so, the child realizes, oh, that's actually the end of the discussion. I'm just wasting my breath, okay? And so it cuts out arguing. Because when you get used to debating with your child, everything, you have to explain to him why, you have to give him all your reasons, they have to pass his scrutiny, he has to approve of what you're thinking. Like, you know what? You're doing the best you can for your child when you say, no, you can't have that third Coca-Cola, you can't stay up till midnight. You're doing the best for him. You don't have to have a fight about it, okay? So, and you don't have to stress yourself out about it. You don't have to argue. But if you're going to argue, you're part of that problem. It takes two people to have an argument. And so, you know, learning the I do not argue with you rule and its details, and all of this is covered in my book, Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice. Then, you know,
that's a really valuable one.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's really hard if you didn't know that strategy before, but it's like, I think it's more of a new one for me, but it was so good. Like, it's like, it just shuts down a lot.
Yeah. It's
like,
quiet.
I didn't think I could do it until it's hard practice the first few times, but once you get the hang of it, it's really good.
Yes. Yeah. It just becomes, that's it. Like, I mean, we can have debates, you know, when we're sitting around the table talking about interesting political issues or something, but we don't want to have debates when it's like I said yes or I said no. It's like I just did the best I can. Sometimes I'll be wrong about my answer, but most of the time, you know, it's all coming from a place of trying to do the best for you. You know, that's the end of that. And then when it comes to asking kids to do something, though, I have the stress reducing 2 times rule. So the 2 times rule stops us from asking and asking and asking and begging until we're screaming and yelling, you know, at our kids, like, time to turn off the computer now. Okay, guys, time to turn off the computer. The people, I said, turn off the computer, and coming back, you know, 5 times or 6 times, and we're like, turn this stupid thing off before I throw it out of the house, you know, like whatever, and just losing ourselves. When we're willing to do it, what I call the 10 times rule, which is ask and ask and ask until you're exploding, you're the one who's putting yourself and your household through tremendous stress. The 2 times rule says you ask once and you can drop it right there if you don't have the real energy to carry through on this. So don't ask a second time. I asked you to turn off the computer, but you know what? I've got a major headache and I'm not going to deal with this. Okay, I'm going to bed, actually. So you can stay on the computer at 3 in the morning because, like, I'm just not up for the, you know, dealing with it. But if you are up for dealing with it, then you can say it a second time. But when you say it the second time, then you would be indicating that either they comply, right? And that's how the story is going to end. So you would say on the first time, please turn off your computer. It's 9 o'clock. Okay, you come back. You say, you're still on the computer. If it's not shut down within the next 30 seconds or 1 minute or 3 minutes, whatever your time, you know, frame is, then such and such consequence will be occurring. So you might say, like, there'll be no computer time for tomorrow, or there'll be no good snacks near lunch, or you'll be going to bed now instead of at 10, or whatever consequence you want. It just has to be something that they wouldn't want to happen. Okay, and then they don't turn off the computer. But, oh, I'm just finishing. I just got a little bit more. I just got one more thing to do. Whatever, you know. But they've passed your deadline, and then you turn the off button on or remove the thing or whatever, and you say, you've just lost whatever, you know, whatever you threatened them. You just lost the snacks in your lunch, or now you're going to bed, or you just lost computer time for tomorrow, or whatever consequence you mentioned. Now, when you use consequences, you can avoid stressing yourself out by using emotional warfare in parenting. Like, it's very stressful to use your anger and to say, like, you know, go into the big lecture. Nobody listens around here. When your parent tells you something, you have to do it. There's no respect. There's no basic decency in this house, blah, 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 blah. All that is so hard on our hearts and on our children's hearts. It's exhausting, depleting completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh gosh, like, you know, so we're going to save ourselves all that. We said it once, we said it twice, we let a little consequence kick in. The consequence is not traumatic. Nobody's ever going to show up in therapy later saying, and then my mother didn't let me have computer the next night. You know, that's not, but if you scream at your kid, actually, they will show up in therapy, you know, later and go, and then my mother always screamed at me, you know, every night. It was a screaming match. I can't stand it. I see her face, her angry face and whatever. What are you laughing at? But anyways, yeah, so instead of using emotional warfare, we'll just pick some little annoying consequence, and that will save ourselves stress. And the children get used to the fact that when we say something will happen, that it does happen, then it's just going to be annoying for them. So they start to improve their listening skills, you know? So now, the other real thing is to know how to educate and discipline children properly, which we cannot rely on the 2 times rule or any such thing for that. I mean, really, we're going to, the more skilled we are, like using positive techniques of guidance, knowing how to wire the little neural pathways in their brain so that they are in the habit of listening, the habit of cooperating, the habit of making their bed and brushing their teeth and cleaning their plates off the table and being kind to their siblings, etc. The more skilled we become at educating, the less stress we feel. So here again, parenting courses. I have a book that I hope all parents will read coming out in January on how to, you know, help using the wiring approach to your children's brain. So it's, you know, that in all pleasant techniques, easy techniques, positive techniques. So constantly, the more we up our skills, the less helpless we feel. And feeling helpless is a great source of parental stress right there. So that's one of the things, you know. You mentioned before, because there's a different kind of helplessness. You mentioned turning to God, you know, like many things are out of our control in parenting. I mentioned that, and that's also a source of stress. The fact that we cannot keep our children completely safe, like even if we're doing everything right inside the home, there's people out there who will reject them. There's people out there who might hurt them. There's bad things that can happen. They may fail at what they're trying to do. We cannot keep them away from their struggles. But as if we're faith-based and we pray for them, that's a way to reduce our stress. So like, okay, God, I can't do it, but you can protect them. So you protect them, please, and help them in their journey and help them prosper and be successful and blah, blah, blah. So that's stress reducing thing for us to turn to our own higher power there. And, you know, understanding that are the limits of our role, that it's not all up to us, but whatever small section of parenting is up to us, we want to do a decent job of, which is why we keep learning new skills and new techniques. But to understand that there's another parent in the house, there are teachers at school, there are children in the neighborhood, there's the whole world that's open to them via the internet. There's many, many things going on, and we are not solely responsible. Like if we can shrink the sense of what's up to us down to realistic size, okay? It's not all up to us. We have a small section. We want to do well with our section and see ourselves as guides and supports for our children along their journey, knowing that our children will have pain just like we do. Pain is part of life for all human beings. And to not be afraid of their pain or their inability to cope. So
that's a hard one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really hard one.
Because like, we want to save them, yeah.
Yeah, like I think like not feeling their pain, like when they're sad, but because you punish them, like not kind of reneging because they're, you know, just that's a hard one. Like that's because you don't want to, or not even like if you know, if you at the beginning you talked about disappointing them, like not having not being able to be enough, like, you know, either financially or time. Yeah. And it's disappointing to them. Well, you know, that's the reality of the situation, and there's nothing that you could do about it, and not to own that.
Like, I mean, it's interesting, you know, if we were able to protect them from disappointment all the way through childhood, we would leave them crippled in adulthood. I mean, let's imagine growing up never having had a disappointment. And then you come across your first disappointment when you're 25 and at work you didn't get your promotion or something. I mean, I don't know how you would possibly cope. Like, you know, childhood stress is a preparation for adult stress, but what we want to show them is that when you're stressed, there's things you can do, right? Like there's, You can name your feelings. You can talk to someone about your feelings. You can change your thoughts. You can exercise. You can take Bach flower remedies, which is not, stress reducing herbs and treatments and whatever that are healthy for you. You can be kind to yourself. You can do something fun, like teaching children that, yeah, there's going to be times when they're frustrated, when they're sad, when they're unhappy, whatever, and knowing that's not dangerous for them. Like, parents now are so scared that their children are going to suffer that we would cushion them so much that they will be completely not resilient. What do you call it? The opposite, right? So fragile because they can't cope with anything. They've never had to cope with anything. We've saved them from every, nasty teacher's remark. We came to their, every time there was a mean kid in the class, we called it a bully, and we ran and we, got that kid removed from the class or whatever. Like, I mean,
you're like, we bought them a trophy because they didn't win the trophy
right. Rather than saying, that's disappointing. You really tried hard. It's so frustrating when you lose. Gosh, what a bummer, and just showing like you can stand it. If you can stand it, it gives them courage to stand it also. But when we go, oh my goodness, no, I'm going to get you that trophy because, everybody in the class should have one. You're like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Right? Like, we're not helping them at all. So, being afraid of feelings creates a lot of stress. Running away from feelings, I mean, that's what creates our little young alcoholics and our young drug addicts, running away from feelings. So, we want to be good to feel bad. It feels bad a little bit. All feelings pass. They move like a bell curve. Like, they get intense, and then they go down again. Like, they don't just stay. They go up and they go down in waves. And, we have good times and we have less comfortable times. And that's how it is to be human. So if we can help ourselves accept that and be okay with our children's like, yeah, you're not happy because I took away computer for tomorrow. I understand you're not happy. And I can live with that. I don't have to give it back to you because you're crying now. Like,
right.
I'm making all education in this household like totally useless and whatever.
Right. Like, here's the candy. Stop crying.
Right.
There's been a lot of questions.
Okay, why don't we answer questions? Oh, we're really late. I didn't realize what time it is.
Oh, I don't even know what time it is.
Yeah, it's 10 after 10.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so do you have time? Should we answer the questions, like, later, or do you want to just go quickly?
Later when?
I don't know. Maybe we should, like, take 5 minutes.
Let's take 5 minutes, and then I better go, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to scroll back to, like, the older ones.
Okay. And there's a good question here. Oh, I just see a question. I just see a good question on my screen here from Sherry. She says, how not to get stressed when a toddler's tantruming and stressing the whole household, except for the mom, who's like, can handle it. So the mom is like, okay, he's just screaming. But the rest of the kids are walking around with their hands on their ears. Make him stop. And everybody's like stressed out from the toddler. That's
a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. While the other kids are uncomfortable and they can't stand the noise. And so it's one of those examples of where you would accept the children's discomfort. So like, okay, he's screaming. He's not happy, but that's okay. And you don't like his noise. I understand. So we have another room in the house that you can go to till he stops. He'll stop eventually, So we don't worry about those other kids either. This is not a terrible life event that we have to save them from. They have a sibling. They tantrum themselves when they were kids. He said, well, you did a lot worse when you were his age. So like, just. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. So I scrolled back. What if your child decides he doesn't want to get dressed for school, and you tell him he could go to school in his pajamas? Can I actually follow through with that? What do you suggest?
I suggest learning a lot of parenting techniques, right? A lot of skills. Like, one of the things is that we don't use consequences that would be humiliating to a child, embarrassing, devastating in any way, or that we are not prepared to carry through. So we would never mention you will go to school in your pajamas, or, if you lose your mittens this year, then I'm not buying you another pair. You could just get frostbite. Like, no, we're not going to threaten things, or I'm going to leave you here in the park if you don't come right now. No, don't threaten anything that you will not do, because then the basis of your discipline will fall apart. So you have to find a consequence that you can live with really comfortably. And it shouldn't. I wouldn't put a kid in his pajamas.
So is it wrong that I let one of my kids, when he was like 4 years old, go to school for a month in a Superman costume?
Well, I said the punishment would be, I said don't use a punishment that's embarrassing to the child. So if he liked his Superman costume at age 4 and felt great in it, then he was not humiliated or devastated or embarrassed. So that's fine. Maybe you were.
Whatever.
Yeah, right.
So okay, yeah, so you answered that one already. Can you save the live? Yes. Hopefully it will work. Usually it works, so hopefully it will tonight.
It'll be around for 24 hours, right? And then
yeah.
what do you suggest?
What do you suggest when after saying no to something, you say no twice, refuse to engage, and the child refuses to do something they need to do?
There'll be a consequence, but if they need to do it, if the child is small enough that you can make it happen. So for example, the child needs to get in his seat belt. He needs to get in the car and put his seatbelt on, right? This needs to happen because you're driving off and then you've got other kids you've got to take to school. So the kid is screaming, no, 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 and he's flailing and fighting with you, and you're going to say to that kid, if I have to put the seatbelt on you, then you're not getting your treat or whatever it is that he was about to get, let's say, right? Meaning, I can make this happen, but if you make me make it happen, if I have to struggle with you to get your coat on, to get you in the seatbelt or whatever, or to make you do this, because it has to happen, but I don't want to be struggling with you. So the struggle is not the consequence. The consequence will be something different for making me force you. I don't want to have to force you. I want you to buckle this thing up yourself or put your sweater on and go or whatever it is, right? So if I have to get your clothes on so we can leave right now, I will put them on. But then tonight you'll be in bed at 6 o'clock or whatever it is because you're making this happen now. Okay, that sort of thing. Now, if the kid is too old and you cannot force the issue, so like let's say the kid doesn't want to go to the doctor to get his needle, right? And he's 14 or 15. You know? So you're not gonna, you can't drag him into the car, you can't drag him into the doctor's office, you can't carry him. So you can say, if you don't go, then such and such consequence will be happening until you change your mind about that. So there's something this kid needs in life every day, like dinner that's not bread and water, let's say, or what he needs something from you. And, you'll make sure that happens until the kid, you have a lot of real power over your children since you provide them with every one of their pleasures and their needs. So they're all their comforts, their pillows, their bed, you won't be sleeping in your bed. You'll be sleeping on the floor in the basement. If the kid doesn't like that, some kids like the floor in the basement, whatever it is, But, there's a consequence for everybody. If you're interested, I am doing Jewish workshops at jewishworkshops.com, a full course right now on discipline. It's 8 hours or whatever. We're looking just at how to discipline your kids, and even though we're working our way through the course, we're on the 4th class, I think, this week, but 4th or 5th. However, if you sign up for it, you'll get the whole program right from the beginning. And you'll learn a lot about real discipline. So I would certainly invite everybody to just write to Jewish Workshops at Jewish Workshops.
That's a good topic.
Oh, yeah. It's everybody's favorite. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's like one or two more. I do the 10 times thing of asking, and then I threaten, which I hate to do, but I'd be doing that with the 2-time rule as well.
No, because you see, most of us are sane at the 2 times rule. Like I said it once, I said it twice. But when we get to the 10 times rule, we are not pleasant. Nobody can even get to 3 times and still have a nice face and a nice voice and whatever. We start to get irritated. We are human. Nobody likes to ask and ask and ask. So then we're using this emotional negativity in our home, which is going to stress the children out and stress us out. So at the 2 times rule, no, we are mentioning a consequence, but that is nothing like the way we'll do it when we get to 10 times. It's much less pleasant at 10 times.
Okay, so there was one, what about telling the kids they can scream outside, putting them outside, as long as they're safe?
As a consequence, it's possible outside
in
the school area. If they're screaming and you want it quiet, you can. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Like in the backyard, maybe.
Sure, in your backyard. I don't know how neighbors would feel about it, but still.
It's also like how old they are. If like
it depends, of course. We don't want to do.
You want them to run away?
No, and nothing traumatizing, nothing unsafe, nothing horrible. I mean, there is an art and skill to consequences for sure.
Yeah, because I think consequences can be scarring
Well,
if they're the wrong
use the wrong
types of
ones, yes,
consequences.
absolutely, yes. But we want them to be more annoying so that the person will choose to avoid them because they're just plain annoying. So
Right. I mean, I have a kid who no matter what consequence, it's like there's nothing. So it's just basically the consequences. We're not like, I can't have a conversation with you until you're ready to, like I just, and he wants to have a conversation, so I just walk away, and when he's ready to talk and be normal, um like and like and talk to me respectfully, then we can have a conversation. But um
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. The one thing I wouldn't ever recommend that a parent do is like stop talking to a kid. You're talking about having a conversation, which I think is a little bit different. Like, in other words,
oh yeah, no, I just wait. He's not like, I don't have conversations when he's shouting at me.
of course, that's right.
So
Yeah,
we're not talking
we'll
until
pick this up when you stop shouting. Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I mean, to me, that's like a non-scarring concept. Like, I'm not gonna like give him the silent treatment.
I do want to hear you. I do want to speak to you about this. And as soon as you lower your voice and calm down, then yeah, we'll be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
What about the gentle parenting approach, connection versus consequence?
Yeah, mostly 99%, we're going to be using positive techniques. That is, techniques that feel good all around to educate our children.
Mm-hmm.
For some children, not for some children, there are some times, rare, very rare, where we'll actually need to use a consequence. But that's not that's what I was saying before. Like, when, and the reason I mention it is because when we pull out the authority card, that can be the most stressful times in parenting for the child and for the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we need to know how to do it when we do it. But you're correct. We're not doing that most of the time. We're doing other techniques that are eliciting cooperation through loving and positive and warm strategies, which we haven't talked about tonight because they aren't stress-inducing. Like, when we know those strategies, we have the least stress going on possible. But when it comes to, you're at the end of the line and you've been plenty nice and this child is not doing what he needs to do, you need to know what you need to do without causing tremendous stress to everybody.
But you're saying that mostly you would not use the consequences.
That's not a primary tool. But if you don't know how to use that properly when you do need it, first of all, if you overuse it, and second of all, when you do it wrong, you will have the most stress possible. You're also going to create a situation in which the children are less compliant, less agreeable, less cooperative by overusing that technique.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have more stress just from that. I mean, yeah, it's just that if you're going to use it, you need to know how to use it.
So that's like the last resort.
This that we're doing here is not a full parenting course. Okay, this is really, we're looking at stress in parenting, right? So we're looking.
Somebody asked for a list of books higher up. Can you your books? Can you list your books that you would recommend?
Well,
and then
all my books are great. Yeah. No, we have Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice. And we have the Fear Fix, which is really about emotional stress and anxiety and worry and negativity for parent and for child. So like when we're into worrying about our children and filling ourselves with stress from ruminating or from worrying and all that stuff, that's what that book, The Fear Fix, is about. But in terms of, and I have other books like Make Yourself at Home or Harmony at Home, which are little essays that are stress reducing. But I have a series of courses on skills that are on my Daily Parenting Post website. And I have something called Daily Parenting Posts, which are little tidbits of stress-reducing techniques for parenting, which anybody can sign up for and receive.
Yeah, if you're not signed up, you better sign up. It's really good. I guess
sign up at dailyparentingposts.com. There's a sign-up page. And then there's a shopping page there, which shows a lot of courses I've given on different aspects of parenting, stress management, the whole thing, marriage also. So there's a lot that we can do. And there's also something that I'm doing weekly, just if anybody wants to join me, again, through Jewish Workshops. It's a weekly webinar, but you can watch it anytime. Either join us live or watch it anytime, forever. And that's called the Family Circle. And in the family circle, we're looking at everything, all aspects of personal stress, marriage, our children's problems, discipline, guidance, education, positive techniques, everything, week after week, just endlessly. Like there's no end to that. So if you join us, that's like Thursdays at 12 noon live, Eastern Standard Time. But like I said, you have the recordings and the ability to interact constantly, no matter what time you join us. So that is the big project that I'm doing now, that we could explore this in depth forever. So, once in a while I can pop on Instagram, but this is not a full program where I can really answer all your questions. There's so many questions to be answered.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. And any other book recommendations?
On stress per se, there's let me just think. There's Hardwiring Happiness, a book for adults by Dr. Rick Hansen, on how to get rid of a stressed out brain and have a much happier brain. That's a really good one. And there's a lot of books actually. I just they cover kind of different aspects of stress.
So maybe we can post it. We'll post it later, like a list, if we can compile a list. And if anyone has some good recommendations, they could also private message. And
there's a lovely book that just came out called How to Heal Your Anxiety When No One Else Can, by Cher, Scher. I forget her first name, but that's the last name. And that's a lovely book using some cutting edge techniques for cutting through stress. So that's a really good one too. All right. Okay. Well, I don't want to get too stressed, so I'm going to go to bed. I'm tired now.
Self-care time.
Relax. Self-care time. Exactly. So
okay. Thank you so much.
Having me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay. So so any other questions, you could private message later. But we're done.
Okay. We're done.
Gotta go to bed.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.